Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the EasyPower Tuesday Refresher webinar series. My name is Jim Chastain. I'm an applications engineer here with EasyPower. Today's topic is a little less technical than we usually try to get into. I received a phone call a couple weeks back, and it was from a long-time EasyPower user, and he had questions about some of the reports and how to modify some of the reports that the tool can produce. And as we were discussing it, I realized we don't talk about this that often, and it might be a good topic for those of you that are either new with the tool or, as his case, familiar with the tool but wanted to know a little bit more in depth how to manipulate some of these features. And this is where we came up with a topic. So hopefully it'll meet with your expectations. And frankly, we're less concerned about the technical aspect of the report and more with the cosmetic aspect. So, and as we like to do, we'd like to start with a poll question just to get a little bit of feedback from the audience. Appreciate your participation, and again, there's no obligation. First question is, do you customize reports and deliverables for your customers? Again, this is not all that restrictive or probably all that insightful, but would appreciate some feedback. And I guess the bottom line for the next 25 or 30 minutes of discussion is to encourage people to stretch your wings a little bit as far as the reporting capabilities of the tools. So it looks like we have a quorum here. Let's see how folks have kind of responded. All right, now the next question. Have you seen labels with QR codes on them? Well, if you've seen my webinars about ArcFlash labels, you've seen me kind of touch on this topic. And parts of the market seem to be responding or jumping on the bandwagon. And I think it's a capability that's growing, and based upon your customer base or the needs of the customers, there could be more demand for this if you're aware of how to control it. So it looks like we have a quorum here. Here's how folks have weighed in on it. So yeah, I think this kind of matches what my expectation of the exposure is. We won't spend a lot of time on it, but it is a feature that I think is gaining traction, and it'd be good to know. So meanwhile, back to the presentation. The agenda today is basically focusing on the drawings as an output of the tools, how to manipulate the analysis results, touch a little bit on labels and what this QR thing seems to be allowing or permitting as far as capabilities, and then some miscellaneous topics. And so under the customizing the drawings, we're going to talk about customizing the data and content of the template that's used to display the drawings, and then the details that can be displayed from just the one-line diagram or subsets of it. And then in some cases, and we've touched on this before, to illustrate in the schedule display, which can be put on a drawing, the ArcFlash results as potentially part of the schedule itself. So anyway, some of this we've touched on previously, some we haven't, but the intent is to get a lot more into detail of the manipulation of the presentation. Now, what I'm about to do, you can experiment if you have the tools yourself with a file that's installed in the sample folder of the one-lines, and I'll show you how to get to it in a second. What you're going to see me do is include the title block on a drawing, do some customization with the logos that are displayed, and in this case I previously saved a JPEG image that I'll use as the logo to manipulate. I'll show you how to modify the title block in terms of the colors, the content of the text and the fields, and then how to include a panel schedule on some of the drawings. And again, all this is built in one of the examples in the tools. So with that said, for those of you that don't know, if you go to the EasyPower start page and open a one line, it goes to this folder on my installation. Under My Documents, EasyPower 10.51 lines installed with the tool, there's a folder called Samples. And if I open that up by double-clicking on it, one of the fairly large drawings is a file called Protection 1. So I'm going to open it up and spend the next few minutes talking about some of the features that are already there. Now I protect all of my examples so that they're only read-only, just so that as I'm making changes or trying to do different functions, it doesn't foul up the original drawing. And here's what it looks like. Now, those of you that are familiar with the tool realize that if I need to make a drawing either of all the whole system or some part of this subsystem, all I need to do is left click and drag to select that number of elements, and then under Easy Controls, use this left New Drawing Insert, and as I click on it, it will create that drawing with the contents that I've described. Now you'll notice this particular element included some title block, which I'm not going to deal with right now. So I'm going to take this drawing off my list just so I haven't scrambled anything yet. And I'm going to look at some of the drawings that they've had with the example itself. So E101 is a drawing of my whole system where I've included it. And now that I've got it selected or created, I can go up to this icon which indicates Drawing Properties. If I click on it, it allows me to control the elements that are used to create this particular drawing. And what you can see here is that we're not showing a title block, and we really don't have anything displaying anything other than just the drawing itself. If we go to the Page tab, you can see I have the ability to change the size of the page. Right now we're looking at 11 by 17. If I try to fit it into an 8.5 by 11, you can see it's too small. I can also reorient the orientation. So in this case, if we put it in landscape, the paper wouldn't surround my drawing, so I would want to use portrait in this case. And I can control the margins, and so that's a little border around the edge. Now, so that's plain and simple. If I wanted to show a title block, I'm going to go back and pin this so I don't have to go back and forth. I could start with this one line, Drawing Properties, and if I go to the title block, show the title block, and apply it, and you can see, like we saw before, it's a horizontal display, so I need a different title block. So for now, let's just leave this one alone. Go to the next example, E102. Now here, we have a subset of our system, the motor bank of the refiner. And if we go to the drawing properties, we can see the page is 11 by 17. And we are showing the border. If we go to the title block, we're showing the default title block, which has these fields already pre-established. And I have the ability to change from any one of these prompts. So if the equipment name needs to be changed, I can do it in this field. Let's say if it was actually Transformer 4, I would change this here. And so all of these elements that are down in the title block can be modified and data entered in any one of these fields. So let's say we wanted to record revision 1. So let's call it 34A. And let's say it's today's date, whatever that is. And let's say the description is adding a subsystem. And let's say I was the one that did it. And so as I do this, it'll change those fields on my title block. Now, what we see here is two icons, two images, and these are part of the drawing properties. If I scroll all the way down on my title block choices, I'll notice there's two pointers down here, one that says customer logo and the other says EasyPower logo. It's important to notice kind of where these pointers go. They go to program data EasyPower 10.5 title blocks. Now, I'm loath to change things in the program data area, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but for now, let's change this customer logo to a more appropriate customer. And I've already saved an image for my favorite guy, Alfred E. Newman. Where I saved it is not in the program data location, but I'm going to go back to my documents, EasyPower 10.5, title box. I've saved that image previously in this particular folder. Now, if I select that, if I direct this pointer to pick up this image and apply it, now good old Alfred E. Newman is in my customer image location, and I may be happy. So now by doing this, I've got that title block basically that I can reuse and set up. Now, that seems pretty cool. If I want to change some of these elements, now more than just the pointer to the image, if I wanted to change color, change the title block, or even change the contents or the orientation, there are a number of, let me see if I got one here. There are a number of ways to do that from pre-existing templates. So if I go out here and show the title block, I'm going back to the same one I just modified, same drawing, and now I go to the specified title block. You can see here that under the pointer to my documents, EasyPower 10.5 title blocks, there are a host of different title blocks, mainly segregated by the dimensions of the page itself and by the orientation. So if we look at this, and these will make a little more sense as we play with a few of them. If we look at this, here's a detailed 8.5 by 11 vertical. If I select that and apply it, I now can orient my title block on a page that may or may not be more appropriate for the layout of the subsystems I'm trying to examine. What I would encourage is to look at all of these and see what works for you and the size pages that you're dealing with. Now, so that's for starters. Now, if you wanted to do some modifications, you'll notice that I've saved, here's a detailed 8.5 by 11 horizontal that I've relabeled Alfred. And by applying this, now I've got that as a different display then, if you will. And what I'm describing is a way to come up with a standard look for your presentation material that is unique to you and may or may not be something that's appropriate for everybody or every customer. Now, another part of this particular template is it doesn't have that extra image I was talking about, and it may be that I want to go in and change this image instead of having EasyPower, have the customer image or have my other whatever logo I want to go here. So let's kind of go back and walk through that process. And that's where this, I refer to it as a hacker mentality, but what it really is just understanding the capabilities of the template that are pre-existing, and you have the ability to follow on. And I'm going to do that by going to my File Explorer and go into that particular folder. So again, we're looking at under My Documents, EasyPower 10.5, title blocks. And so these are all the default templates that are included with the installation. So what I wanted to do is open up a specific one that I like the fit. And so apparently it was 11 by 17 horizontal with detailed, and I want to make some modifications to it. So I'm going to right click, and in my case I use Notepad++, and it's a pretty versatile freeware tool that allows me now to open and make changes to this particular file. And the first thing I want to do is save it as a different name so I don't overwrite or change the basis of that default template that's installed with the tool. So in this case, I saved it as Alfred detailed 11.7. So I'm going to close this one and go back to Alfred. Okay, so I've saved it as Alfred detailed 11.17. Now I want to look for where I have that logo. I'm going to go in and search. If I look at the code, if I just kind of scan the code, I see there's different block names, there's different names that are used, and this designates different frames or different positions in the title block itself. So what I found is here on my entry that describes this particular location is where the customer contact or the customer logo was. So I've replaced it with this Alfred.jpg, and now it's included in this basic template. Now, what I'm about to do, or where is all this all detailed, is in the user's guide. So let me kind of show you where I came from here. So this is all detailed in the chapter on drawing title block templates, and you can find it easily enough by just searching. In this case, I searched on hex colors because I wanted to make certain elements in my one-line drawing a different color. And so I picked out, and the default is FF0000, and I found that the color I wanted was FFF, 4 Fs and 4 zeros. So let's go back and see where I ended up with that. And so, well, I just went through the code until I found the location where I was trying to change my equipment code, and I wanted to make it a different color. So I picked out FF, 4 Fs and 4 zeros, and by doing that, I can locate that particular element on the one line. So now I'm going to close this and save my Alfred renamed code. I can get rid of this guy, save the changes I've made, close it. Now I'm going to go back to EasyPower. and I want to pick up that particular template. And so I'm going to pick up Alfred, horizontal, detailed. Now you can see down here on my title block that I've got different colors now for both the title frame and my equipment code frame. So again, it's a little bit of a deduction method, but it's the way I perceive hackers do a reverse engineer of a particular file, and it's a relatively efficient way to generate a customized template that can be reused anytime I want. Okay, so that's enough on drawings. Now, the other thing that I've mentioned before, we can include drawings on any folder, and there are times when the basic template is nice, but it would be good to have the client wants ArcFlash data on my schedule for each of the folder, each of the panels. So I'm going to go back to my one line. I'm going to go into File, Properties, and from here it allows me to change the scheduled templates that are used throughout the system. So I'm going to pick out a specified one, not the default, and it's going to be one that I've saved previously in my templates folder, and I refer to it as Gem Panel Schedule EPZL. Now again, this is in a different folder under my installation for 10.5, and I've saved it previously. Now we will post this link to this file, which you can save as a EasyPNL file in your installation and be able to do the following. So once I install this and apply it, it's going to change all the panel schedules in my system. So now when I go back to the panel, it's showing I have a slot for fault current, arc flash boundary, working distance, and instant energy. Now to fill in this data, I need to go to short circuit focus. Let's go ahead and fault the buses, but I need to do a fault and store, which is under the advanced, to fill in those locations in my schedule. So you can see a fault and store for short circuit current, and then I can do a fault and store for arc flash instant energy. As I do that, it gives me my arc flash boundary, my working distance. Now this will be on each of the schedules that we use in the system. So again, that's another way to modify by using the same methodology of changing the HTML file, which is the template. Okay, so that's modifying the drawings. A couple other points I wanted to make is in short circuit, it's relatively easy to customize the output for high voltage and low voltage momentary current, or for any time slice, half cycle, 5 cycle, or 30 cycle. I think it's important to do equipment duty report. And as we go into EasyPower, I'm going to go back to my database edit. Let's go ahead and save changes. Go back to my one line. Now, equipment duty is part of short circuit and fault the buses, and then use this little equipment duty icon here and create a report that says equipment duty. Now, this may be a little cumbersome to include all devices in expanded format. Another way to get there, as far as the worst case scenario in each bus, is with the scenario manager. So if we have a more complex system that has multiple scenarios and we want to show with and without motors, we can create those scenarios. I'm going to go back to my start page. open my scenario report file, because this is a more complex system and I have multiple scenarios that show with each individual supply, tie, open and close. Well, the one thing it doesn't show is both systems online and the tiebreaker closed. Now that may be something that the company agreed not to do or not to operate in, but the fact is it may produce a worst case situation for my whole system, and it may be something I alert the client to, particularly if this is an older plant. So the way this is done is I'm going to go into my base case. I want to save a new scenario, start a new scenario. And so now it's indicating that I have a new scenario. I'm going to go in and operate this particular breaker and indicate that it's closed, just in this scenario. So now I'm going to save the scenario as tie closed with both supplies. You get the idea. Now that I've got that defined, I'm going to go back to my base case. And I'm going to create a report for my scenario manager, specifically for equipment duty. And we're going to use all scenarios, and what this will allow me to do, you'll notice that the report shows all scenarios worst case with a little X box. It can show me the over duty devices and then the worst case listing, and consequently I got a minimized report, if you will, of all the over dutied elements when I have that both systems online and the tiebreaker closed. Again, may or may not be an important thing to point out. Okay, so that was scenario report, worst case. Now, just while we're here on talking about reports, if we go to short circuit, any of these reports, high voltage, low voltage, 5-cycle, momentary, medium format, equipment duty, once we've generated the report, we can print it as is, but all these reports on my fault request are listed now under the list of windows. And basically, once I pick out a particular report, I can print it as is, and one of the little features is the shadow table. If you'll notice around the edge of the table, there's a little bit of a indented shadow. I can take that off if it's something I don't want, but it makes it a nice feature if I'm going to print this out, print it as is. And so a print preview would show that particular report. If I want to export it, I can export to Excel or to Word. And it doesn't have the shadow, but it has a nice orientation for each of the categories and each of the buses. Now that's under the standard typical report. And so the advantage of exporting to Excel or Word is being able to reorient your display in that format. Now those are mostly the common reports that we talk about. Another, I believe, excellent report generating tool is the equipment duty, the database browser. If I go back to database edit, go under file and database browser, there's two similar reports here. One is database browser, which can give me the content of the database for each element of my system. And a lot of people use this for things like cable schedules, where I can display the list of cables, and then I can reorient it, the configuration, by selecting which element I want to show and which columns or parameters for that particular element can be displayed. And so that gives me a lot of versatility. And again, this can be exported to Excel and then reformatted any way I want. Likewise, so this is database browser. If I go back to the database, let's get out of this one, the database report, it gives me the ability to combine both of those steps in one fell swoop. So if I go back to database report, again, this allows me to reconfigure it and display it for whatever purpose that it may fit my needs with discussions with the client. And again, this can be printed as is or exported to Word or Excel. Then finally, not necessarily finally, one of the things that we recommend, or I recommend, is even though we may or may not have done a coordination report, it's important, I believe, to make sure that we include in our report to the client the current settings as we found them or as were reported for all the protective devices, because that's going to make a difference in the calculations. And it's kind of a CYA situation where we have the settings that were recorded, and if a situation arose where something was amiss because the settings was changed, we know that it happened after we completed our study. Chuck's asking, if you create a report in Excel, can you wrap the columns to print does not get so small? The answer is yes. Export it to Excel, and then you can wrap it as many times as you want in any particular column. So that's the advantage of exporting to Excel, is that you get the full features of what the Excel format can give us. Okay, so what have we done? Oh, it was one more thing I want to touch on before we get out of here. Oh, we talked about protective device settings, which is more of a cover your bases situation. Probably one of the more important documents to be generated as a result of the study is the hot work permit. And it doesn't make sense necessarily for a subcontractor to do that who may not be familiar with the work that needs to be done. But I think it's a conversation that should apply because the client needs to incorporate the results of the study in any decision made to do work under hazardous conditions. So I would suggest having a preliminary study and producing some work permit reports and show them how to generate it if they are not doing so. Tamiris is asking, when I setting a bus, can I include the panel manufacturer model? The answer is yes. It depends on where you want to put it in the report. I need to take that one offline. It could be a relatively simple situation by including other fields in the report that I'm trying to produce, but it's not a standard. It's not a standard thumbs up or thumbs down answer. So let me get back to you on that one, specifically on what you're trying to achieve. I did want to touch on the advantages and where things are being implemented in the utilization of the QR code. For some number of years now, EasyPower has the ability to include in the arc flash labels and some customers label it smart label, this QR code. And at least in the case of some very large organizations, it's making it relatively easy to include in the label access for qualified technicians to access part of a database that's, again, behind a secure firewall, and be able to work on the system simultaneously, as opposed to do it in a model environment like EasyPower or a workplace environment. So where EasyPower would be used to set up the database, it's the server that controls the access to it, and multiple people can be making changes via access to QR code. And more detail on this particular application is something we can't disclose, but it gives you an idea of how some of this is being implemented in very large organizations. Okay, appreciate everyone attending today. I think we've run over our time limit. If you have any other questions I can answer, please submit them in the question box, and we will follow up via email. Thank you all for attending today, and we'll talk to you down the road. So long.